Hey, welcome. I'm Wes Hadley. I am chair of the City Circle Board. And my wife is a retired children's librarian, and she said, I asked her for advice about story hours, and she said, well, don't talk too much. Make sure that the points are very clear and straightforward. So I'm here to talk a little bit about this show in general. What you see in front of you are 13 extremely energetic and talented young ladies who comprise our youth corps for Annie, and we'll have a Daddy Warbucks here in a little bit. But when there are 13 people sitting here on the floor, they represent, by my calculation, 65 or 70 people who are actively involved in the show. I serve as music director. There is a producer who's responsible for all the details, making sure everything gets done. There's a director who tells everybody where to stand and when to talk. We have a costumer. We have a person who designs the scenes, a person who does the lights, a person who does the sound that we use at the Coralville Center for the Performing Arts. So what you see here performing today just represents the tip of the iceberg. And I would underscore the notion that we'd like to see all of you out there in some capacity, on stage or off, assisting us. We also have stage managers. The list is endless. So when you see a production, just remember that the production is sort of like the tip of the iceberg. Choreographers, I can keep going on all of this in terms of the number of people who are involved, but I'm going to keep it simple. City Circle has been in existence now for about 21 years, and it is a part of the city of Coralville. And we do all of our performances at this point in time in the Coralville Center for the Performing Arts. We're one of the theater community in Iowa City, North Liberty, Coralville is very vibrant. There are a number of other groups that people can get involved with. So, tickets to the show, I've been told already that the tickets are going very quickly. We have some information about the tickets over there on the table, and after the program's over, we'll probably have somebody from our City Circle Board to talk about it if you have any questions at all. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Emily, who is going to be your Story Hour leader today.
Thanks, Wes. Good morning, everyone. I am so excited for you all to be here today. So we're going to go ahead and start with our book, Annie. If anyone wants to scooch closer to see pictures, you're welcome to come sit on the floor. Anybody way up top there? Annie was a little girl with curly red hair. She did not have a mother or a father. She lived with other girls who did not have parents. They were all called orphans. The orphans lived in a house with Miss Hagedorn. Miss Hannigan. Miss Hagedorn is my child's teacher. Sorry. Miss Hannigan was very mean. She made the girls work hard. They had to scrub floors. They had to clean and clean and clean. Now Annie and our orphans will perform It's a Hard Knock Life.
It's a hard knock life for us.
did not like all the hard work. She missed her real parents. Annie had half a locket from her parents, and she had a note that said they would be back to get her soon. She was sure her real parents would come back and get her one day. But it had been 11 years, and Annie's parents had not come to get her. So she decided to go and find them. One day, a man came to pick up the laundry. Annie climbed inside the bag and hid. The man went outside. He put the bag in the back of his truck and drove away. Annie was free. Later, Annie climbed out of the bag and out of the truck. On the street, Annie found a dog. "Oh, poor boy," said Annie to the dog. He didn't have a home either. Suddenly, a policeman came up to Annie. Annie knew the policeman was after the animal. "Is that dog a stray?" he asked. "Oh, no, he is my dog," Annie said. "So what's his name?" the policeman asked. "His name is Sandy," Annie said. The policeman did not believe that the dog was really hers. "Let's see if he answers to his name," the policeman said. Annie was scared. "Sandy," she called. The dog came running. The policeman let Annie keep the dog. Annie now had a dog and a friend. Our Annie will now perform tomorrow. But then Sandy ran away, and another policeman caught Annie. She was taken back to Miss Hannigan. Miss Hannigan was angry that Annie had run away. She yelled and yelled and yelled at Annie, but then she stopped. Someone was at the door. It was a woman named Grace. A rich man named Mr. Warbucks had sent her. She wanted an orphan to spend Christmas with him, and Grace picked Annie. Annie said goodbye to the other orphans. Grace took Annie to Mr. Warbucks' house. It was big and beautiful. Annie, what do you want to do first? Grace asked. The floors, said Annie. You won't have to do any cleaning while you're here, Grace said. I won't, Annie said. You are our guest, said Grace. Mr. Warbucks came home. Annie was happy to meet him. He told Grace to take Annie to the movies. Annie was sad. She wanted Mr. Warbucks to come too. I'm afraid that will be far too busy tonight, he told Annie. But Annie would not take no for an answer. At last, Mr. Warbucks agreed to go. And they all had a wonderful time. Soon, Annie and Mr. Warbucks were going everywhere together. Mr. Warbucks wanted Annie to live with him for good. He bought Annie a present. It's a silver locket, he said. I saw that old broken one you always wear, and I said to myself that I would get you a nice new locket. Mr. Warbucks tried to take off Annie's old locket. No, please don't make me take my locket off, Annie cried. She told Mr. Warbucks that the locket was from her parents, and she told him that they were coming back for her. I'll find your parents for you, said Mr. Warbucks. Mr. Warbucks and Annie went to the radio station. They said that Mr. Warbucks could pay a lot of money if Annie's parents were found. Back at Miss Hannigan's house, the orphans heard Annie on the radio. Miss Hannigan heard the news too. Just then, 2 people came into Miss Hannigan's house. Are you the lady who runs this place? The man asked. Yes, Miss Hannigan said. We have to leave our baby here, the man said. Our little girl, Annie, the woman said. Are you Annie's parents? Miss Hannigan asked. The man shouted, I got you, sis. It was Miss Hannigan's brother, Rooster, and his friend, Lily. They had a plan to trick Mr. Warbucks. They wanted Mr. Warbucks to think they were Annie's parents. Then they would get the money, and they did not care what happened to Annie. A lot of people said they were Annie's parents, but they were all fakes. Grace told Annie that all the people wanted was the money. You did your best, Annie told Mr. Warbucks. If you can't find them, nobody can. Mr. Warbucks knew he loved Annie. Annie, I want to adopt you, Mr. Warbucks said. If I can't have my real mother and father, there is no one in the world I'd rather have for a father than you, said Annie. Mr. Warbucks had a big party on Christmas Eve. He was happy that he and Annie were together at last. Daddy Warbucks and Annie will now perform I Don't Need Anyone But You.
I'm the luckiest man in the world.
And I'm the luckiest kid.
Together at last, together forever. We're tying on knots they never can sever. I don't need sunshine now to turn my skies to blue. I don't need anything but you. You wrapped me around that cute little finger. You made life a song. You made me a singer.
And what's the best of always
Anything but you.
Yesterday was plain awful.
You can say that again.
Yesterday was plain awful.
But that's
Not now.
then.
Poor as a mouse.
I'm richer than Midas, but nothing on earth could ever divide us. And if tomorrow I'm an apple seller too, I don't need anything but you.
During the party, Rooster and Lily came in. They were dressed up as Annie's parents. They had a paper that said that Annie was their child, and they had the other half of Annie's locket. It was a perfect fit. Annie's parents were found. Rooster wanted to take Annie right away. What about the money? Mr. Warbucks asked. Money? Rooster said. We don't have much, but we can give you some. Mr. Warbucks shook his head. He told Rooster and Lily that he was giving them money. Rooster and Lily said they did not want the money, but they were lying. Can Annie stay here until the morning, Mr. Warbucks asked? Then you can come back to pick up Annie and the money. Rooster and Lily really wanted the money, but they said it was okay, and they left. Mr. Warbucks wanted to get back to the party. We have just had the best news, he said. Annie has found her mother and father. But Annie was not happy. She ran upstairs. In the morning, Annie was ready to leave. She tried to put a smile on her face, yet she still was not happy. She did not want to leave Mr. Warbucks. Then Mr. Warbucks told her he had some news. Annie's parents had been found. She did not understand. Her parents were already found. Mr. Warbucks told Annie that the people who had come were fakes. Annie, your mother and father died a long time ago, he said. So I am an orphan after all, Annie said. Annie knew that her real parents had loved her, and she knew that if they were still alive, they would have come back. Now Mr. Warbucks could become Annie's father, but first they had to find out who the fake parents were. Mr. Warbucks found out the truth. Rooster and Lily had faked the papers, and Miss Hannigan had told them about the locket. They were all sent to jail. But what about all the other orphans? Mr. Warbucks said they could all live at his house. Annie was so happy. Mr. Warbucks had one more surprise. Sandy! Home at last. The end.
Well, we'd like to thank you for coming today. Somebody reminded me that I didn't tell you when the show was going to be. It's basically December 6th, 7th, and 8th, 13th, 14th, and 15th. Matinees on Sunday afternoon, the 8th and the 15th. I'm pleased to announce that the tickets are going exceedingly well, particularly the Sunday matinees. So we hope you'll join us for Annie, but we do thank you for coming here today. And could we give another round of applause to our Annie performers today? Thank you.
Thank you all so much for coming today. We're really looking forward to continuing our partnership with the theater, and hopefully we'll see all of you next year and at the show again. I know my kids are super excited about going too. Thanks so much. Enjoy the rest of your day and weekend.